In this video, let us discuss service strategy. Step 3. Quantify the outcomes. In this step, the service provider will work with the customer to identify their desired outcomes. These definitions need to be clear and measurable, and they need to be something that can be linked to the service. In the following example, a lending bank creates value by achieving the outcome of processing a loan application on time. Customers receiving the loan will have access to the required financial capital, and the lender benefits from the onset and accrual of interest. The lending process is therefore a business asset whose performance leads to specific business outcomes. Processing the loan application in time makes the process easier for the customer and creates a competitive advantage. The outcome desired by the bank is to process the loan application on time. The measurement to be used is the number of loan applications that were able to be processed on time. The objective of the service is not only to enable these outcomes to be achieved, but also to increase the number that will be achieved. In this case, a marketing campaign has been launched, and the current service needs to be upgraded to deal with the expected increase in loan applications. Defining outcomes is an important part of defining services, but customers often take it for granted that everyone understands their particular outcomes because they work on them as a matter of routine. It is therefore important that the service provider works with the customer to quantify each outcome and document it as part of the service description that will be entered into the service pipeline. Outcomes for review will be found in the following locations. The service catalogue. Each service in the service catalogue should be clearly linked to defined and quantified outcomes. The service level review or business relationship management surveys should regularly check to make sure that these outcomes are still valid and that additional outcomes are identified and documented through service portfolio management. The service pipeline. These are outcomes that a new service or major change to an existing service needs to be able to support. These will be used as a criterion for the success of the service design and validation. Service level agreement. Many service level agreements will specify the service as well as the outcome it has been designed to support. This will ensure that linkage between the two is maintained and consciously measured. Step 4. Classify and visualize the service. Every service is unique, but many have similar characteristics. If a new service shares common characteristics with an existing service, it will be easier to determine what it will take to deliver the service. If it has no characteristics in common with existing services, this means that the service will need to be evaluated and designed from the beginning. Creating a way to classify services and represent them visually will help in identifying whether a new service requirement fits within the current strategy or whether it will represent an expansion of that strategy. It might also assist the service provider to decide not to make an investment in a service that moves them away from their strategy. Most organizations have a combination of utility and asset-based service patterns, but the visualization of services helps them to understand where they are strongest in each and where they need to strengthen their portfolio resources or capabilities. This combination of service archetypes and customer assets often results in a series of patterns that indicate the positions where the service provider is strong. Services with closely matched patterns indicate opportunity for consolidation or packaging as shared services. If the application's asset type appears in many patterns, then service providers can have more investments in capabilities and resources that support services related to applications. Similarly, if many patterns include the support archetype, it is an indication that support has emerged as a core capability. These are just some simple examples of how the service catalogue can be visualized as a collection of useful patterns. Service strategy can result in a particular collection of patterns, intended strategy, or a collection of patterns can make a particular service strategy attractive, emergent strategy. Step 5. Understand the opportunities, market spaces. The service provider now has a good understanding of the customer and their assets and is able to map existing capabilities and resources to existing customer assets to understand what service they're able to provide. Each customer has a number of requirements and each service provider has a number of competencies. How does the service provider understand where its competencies will be able to meet the customer's requirements? These intersections between the service provider's competencies and the customer's requirements are called market spaces. More formally, market spaces are the opportunities that an IT service provider could exploit to meet the business needs of customers. Market spaces identify the possible IT services that an IT service provider may wish to consider delivering. A market space is defined by a set of business outcomes which can be facilitated by a service. The opportunity to facilitate those outcomes defines a market space. The following are examples of business outcomes that can be the basis of one or more market spaces. Sales teams are productive with sales management system on wireless computers. E-commerce website is linked to the warehouse management system. Key business applications are monitored and secure. Loan officers have faster access to information required on loan applicants. Online bill payment service offers more options for shoppers to pay. Business continuity is assured. Each of the outcomes is related to one or more categories of customer assets, such as people, infrastructure, information, accounts receivable, and purchase orders, and can then be linked to the services that make them possible. Each outcome can be met in multiple ways, although customers normally prefer those with lower costs and risks. Service providers create the conditions under which outcomes can be met through the services they deliver. Step 6. Define services based on outcomes. An outcome-based definition of services ensures that managers plan and execute all aspects of service management entirely from the perspective of what is valuable to the customer. Such an approach ensures that services not only create value for the customers, but also capture value for the service provider. Solutions that enable or enhance the performance of the customer assets indirectly support the achievement of the outcomes generated by those assets. Such solutions and propositions hold utility for the business. When that utility is backed by a suitable warranty, customers are ready to buy. Customers can express dissatisfaction with a service provider even when terms and conditions of service level agreements, SLAs, are fulfilled. Often this is because it is not clear how services create value for customers. In these cases, services are often defined in the terms of resources made available for use by customers. Service definitions lack clarity on the context in which such resources are useful and the business outcomes that justify the expense of a service from a customer's perspective. This problem leads to poor designs, ineffective operation, and lackluster performance in service contracts. Service improvements are difficult when it is not clear where improvements are truly required. Customers can understand and appreciate improvements only within the context of their own business assets, performances, and outcomes. A proper definition of services takes into account the context in which customers perceive value from the services. Step 6. Define services based on outcomes. Well-formed service definitions lead to effective and efficient service management processes. Generic examples are given below. Example 1. Collaboration services provide value to the customer when cooperative business communications are conducted without the constraints of location or device. Value is created when the provider operates for the customer store and forward and real-time methods of electronic messaging so that the customer's employees can compose, send, store and receive communications in a convenient, reliable and secure manner for a specified community of users. Example 2. Application hosting services provide value to the business when business function services and processes continue to operate without the need to invest capital in a non-core business capability. Value is created when the provider maintains for the business an application software platform system and assures that employees and business systems can work continuously in a convenient, secure and reliable manner for a specified portfolio of services. Being able to define services in an actionable manner has its advantages from a strategic perspective. It removes ambiguity from decision-making and avoids misalignment between what customers want and what service providers are organised and capable enough to deliver. Without the context in which the customers use services, it is difficult to completely define value. Without complete definition of value, there cannot be complete production of value. As a result, outcomes are not fulfilled to the customer's satisfaction. However, it is not to say that a service cannot be developed without a customer in hand. It simply means that the story of a service begins either with the needs of a specific customer or a category of customers, i.e. market space. Customer needs exist and are fulfilled independent of service providers or their services. However, value for a customer, how they're fulfilled and often at what risks and costs. Certain services create value by preventing or recovering from undesirable conditions or states. In such cases, customers may desire a change in the risks to which their assets may be exposed. In either case, the second-order effect of services is that the changes they produce or prevent have a positive and usually measurable effect on the performance and outcomes of the customer's business. Step 7. Service models. The definition of a service model is a model that shows how service assets interact with customer assets to create value. Service models describe the structure of a service, how the configuration items fit together, and the dynamics of the service, activities, flow of resources, and interactions. A service model can be used as a template or blueprint for multiple services. Service models can take many forms, from a simple logical chart showing the different components and their dependencies to a complex analytical model analysing the dynamics of a service under different configurations and demand patterns. Service models have a number of uses, especially in service portfolio management, including understanding what it will take to deliver a new service, identifying critical service components, customer assets or service assets, and then ensuring that they're designed to cope with the required demand. Illustrating how value is created. Mapping the teams and assets that are involved in delivering a service and ensuring that they understand their impact on the customer's ability to achieve their business outcomes. As a starting point for designing new services. As an assessment tool for understanding the impact of changes to existing services. As a means of identifying whether new services can be delivered using existing assets. If not, then assessing what type of investment would be required to deliver the service. Identifying the interface between technology, people, and processes required to develop and deliver the service. A service model is not a design. A service model is a list or diagram of items that will be needed in order to be able to deliver the service. The service model shows how these items are related and how they're used by the service. Service models are the blueprints for service management processes and functions to communicate and collaborate on value creation. Service models describe how service assets interact with customer assets and create value for a given portfolio of contracts. Interaction means demand connects with the capacity to serve. Service level agreements specify the terms and conditions in which such interaction occurs with commitments and expectations on each side. The outcomes defines the value to be created for the customer, which itself rests on the utility provided to customers and the warranty.